The idea of this short tutorial is to help you with possible problems you might have in using AVA360VR. And here you see a list of 5 things we're going to talk about. We can look at VR headsets and problems they might have with those. The question of computing power. Do you have a computer that's powerful enough to run the software? And then how to get started with AVA, some of the little problems that might happen in getting started for the first time. And then other issues there might be, as well as if you find a bug, it's a problem with the software you think, then you can report that on GitHub or Slack, so we'll explain that. So first let's take a look at VR headsets. The VR headsets, these should be for Windows 10. They can't be standalone headsets that run on their own operating system. They can't be AR headsets like the HoloLens. So there's a set of VR headsets which are usually tethered. They don't have to be, but they're usually attached to a Windows 10 computer. And HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift S or the HP Reverb G, these G1, these usually work fine, and we've tested on these sorts of models, Windows mixed reality models, Oculus models, but they have to be the more advanced VR models. And one thing we noticed is with SteamVR and the HTC Vive Pro, which we use a lot and highly recommend, then though it's fairly expensive, is that sometimes the audio microphone doesn't work well. And you have to install all the software that goes with SteamVR that allows you to use the VR headset and the controllers, and you have to configure them, and you have lighthouses to detect where everything is in 3-dimensional space. There's a lot of things to set up and just follow the instructions, and that's something we can't really help you with. But once it's all working, then if you load up AVA360VR, then sometimes the microphone audio is not quite working, and then you should just maybe go into the SteamVR controls, either on your desktop or in VR. If you press the bottom button on the controllers on the Vive Pro, or you open up the SteamVR app and then you look at settings, then when you look at audio, then change the speaker audio to another speaker and change it back to the Vive Pro HDMI connection. Do the same for the microphone, so change it to your laptop mic and then back to the Vive Pro mic. And that often helps, because sometimes the quality is rather metallic, or it's speeded up so the voice quality sounds higher in pitch for your own voice or someone else's voice. So we found to get out of that, it seems to be a bug with SteamVR. Then if you just set to another audio source, microphone or speaker, and then back again to the main one, then it works. Other headsets, there can be little problems, and they are often to do with the software that comes with these that are also extra to SteamVR. Things like the Oculus Rift S or Windows Mixed Realities headsets. There could be a problem with the controllers or with tracking, losing tracking because of the way that they are inside-out tracking, meaning they try to find where the controllers are from the headset rather than from the lighthouses that are surrounding you. Then you're going to have to fiddle with those. Generally with VR, you often have to just debug, try it again, unplug things, plug them in again, run the software again and again, and it usually starts to work. So the little problems happen almost every day with the software because it's extremely sophisticated, trying to calibrate live multiple sources of data, and things can go a little wrong. So that's what we'd recommend. Is just try, test and try again, reset things, and gradually work your way back to unplugging and replugging in again and setting up again. Another question is for computing power. If you want to be able to play lots of things and use lots of tools, then you need a fairly powerful computer because there's a lot going on that you couldn't expect to happen on your desktop, let alone in VR. So you need a good CPU with your laptop or tower computer. It has to be Windows 10, and always update Windows 10 to the latest version. And then you should really have a powerful GPU, like an NVIDIA RTX graphics card, not a Intel inbuilt, because they simply can't cope with the amount of data Remember, VR is often 90 frames a second. That's a lot higher than normal video, which is maybe from 25 to 30 frames a second. And there's a lot of data that's having to be processed to do with the visual graphics. So, and this has to be done live. So it's not rendering it, it's rendering live and not doing it at a slower rate. Otherwise, you'll get strange effects happening in VR. So get a laptop or a computer which has a powerful GPU and a CPU, and this might mean it's fairly expensive. Obviously, a computer is cheaper than a laptop for the same quality, but make sure it's a unit that can cope with VR ready, as they put a label on these computers. And then in terms of disk power, if you want to be able to read off 4K video and a reasonable quality and have multiple things playing at the same time, then you need to have an SSD, a hard drive at 100, maybe 150 megabits a second is just not fast enough to be able to draw all those sources from different files live in AVA360VR. What you have to do in SSD, which has hopefully a much 5 to 10 times faster transfer rate, means that you can play multiple sources at the same time. And this affects if you've got complex data like we have with our Lego demo project, being able to load up multiple cameras and multiple audio sources, different wireless mics, and play them all at the same time. You will notice some sort of hit on the performance, because the more sources there are open, it has to synchronize those and play them all back and draw up the data from the files which are stored on your SSD, hopefully. Still takes a powerful machine to do that. And you just simply wouldn't expect your normal desktop computer to do that, because we don't normally have multiple videos and audios all playing at the same time. But it's so easy to do in AVA360VR. So try and get the best machine you can. Then you have maybe a problem when you get started with AVA360VR. You may have a blank screen after you choose an analysis to load. Maybe there's nothing, you don't see anything. This could be because you have deleted the 360 video. Maybe you'll get an error, or it will just load and be blank. It will just be white or grey. And this could be because the video is not readable by AVA360VR. Make sure it's a standard codec in MP4, not QuickTime, whatever other formats, but a standard codec. And then it can load that video fine. So try a different version, or check that the file is still there and you haven't accidentally deleted it. Another problem might be that your controllers aren't recognized currently. Maybe they've turned off. So when you try to load from the main menu a new analysis version in your project, you will get this error message that you see here. AVA360VR cannot proceed unless the VR headset and both controllers are turned on. So if there's no signal coming back from the software for the VR headset and controllers that they are recognized and turned on, then AVA360VR can't go any further. Otherwise you'll be in VR with no means to control things, or else you just won't see anything again. So wave your controllers around, make sure they're recognized and switched on. If that doesn't work, restart the program and maybe reconnect your devices as well, and maybe check, is there any problems with your current software for your particular headset and controllers. It's very hard to predict what this might be. There's an error why it's not working. Other issues, it could be that media files are not accessible in your project in VR because you put them in the wrong folder. And here we have a diagram which is in one of the tutorials about where the file structure, then this is where AVA360VR expects to have particular types of material. So videos are in these sorts of folders. If you put an unsynced video in the synced folder and try to sync it, it simply won't work, because it's expecting every video to be synced to a standard in point and out point, so that the videos will play perfectly in sync when you try them in AVA360VR. Same with audio. Possibly you put images in the wrong folder or an audio in a video folder, it's not going to work. The slides might not be in the right format. You might not have put the transcripts for Adobe software in the right folder. And 3D objects might not be a standard format. There's so many things that can go wrong because of the format, because being in the wrong folder. So track your data carefully, make sure it's in the right folder, or it might have been deleted and that's why it can't be found. And that's why, for example, when you're doing volumetric capture or volcap and you're replaying, they don't store all the data in an archive. They rely on those data, some of those files being still accessible, and if you delete them, then the volcap replay won't work, because as it tries to replay you manipulating one of those objects, if it was, say, a Sync 360 minisphere, if that doesn't exist, that file anymore, it just simply will show a blank in that minisphere. It'll just be without a video. So if you're doing volcap, just make sure you don't delete some of the media files, assets that are needed. Also, the volcap replay, if you're trying the volumetric capture, then in replay you have a fair number of things that you can do. There's some things you can't do, but you can pause, or while the replay is playing, you can actually manipulate objects and bring up new tools and try things out. But there are certain constraints, so you need to be careful. You may actually disrupt, for example, if you manage to delete one of the objects in the replay, or a window or a menu, then that won't appear anymore, and yet the volcapper will appear, the person who made it originally will appear to be referring to something that no longer exists. You can exit and then start it again and it will come back, but during that session, if you manipulate too much, so you need to be careful of seeing what is possible and how much are you interfering with the archive. And then there are all sorts of other little things that can happen. If you think you've got a bug, then if you go to GitHub, the public archive, and this is the address on GitHub, then on our Big Soft Video account, then there you are allowed to add an issue, and there's a bug issue as well as a feature issue, where you can report the bug and try to give as much information as you can, and then we can hopefully solve that bug or hotfix it. You can also discuss things on our Slack channel on the bigvideoslack.com, which you will be able to access and join and get help from this particular channel that we have. That's a public channel, but there will be private channels, of course, you can't see unless you are a member. And then you'll be able to add questions and get feedback. But major bug issues that we'd like you to put in GitHub, you can ask questions here, and if you don't feel capable, then we can add them ourselves into GitHub, because that's our tracking of all the software development for this public version of AVA360VR. So hopefully that gives you some idea about some of the issues or problems and requirements, and you'll be able to definitely get around them and get started on doing some real analysis with AVA360VR.